I'm Eve Lyon, Recovery Navigator for CareerSource Research Coast. Welcome to St. Lucie Recovery Works, an initiative supported by the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity. In an effort to connect the social service and treatment service providers and the judicial and law enforcement systems to the workforce development community, I invite guests each month for conversations on resources that are available in our community. I'm always grateful to have dedicated local service providers share information about the necessary services that they provide. These informative conversations help us learn how the indispensable programs are founded and meet the incredible people who demonstrate strength, hope, and courage while encouraging individuals and families to feel safe and live free from shame. Tonight, we are blessed to have 3 guests from the Inner Truth Project who will talk about the wide variety of programs offered to provide healing opportunities for people who experience sexual abuse and trauma, one of the most serious public health problems we continue to face. It's time to change our resistant attitudes and have a more meaningful conversation about it. My first guest is Hortensia Mahon. Hortensia, welcome.
Thank you for having me here.
So what is your position at the Inner Truth Project?
I am the administrative assistant.
Okay.
And
what does the administrator do at the Inner Truth Project?
I am the first contact.
Yes.
When people call asking for our programs and help.
So you provide initial information?
I provide the initial information and gather everything we need.
Okay, so you assist with documents.
Mm-hmm.
And then did I also learn that you provide some peer support for our Spanish-speaking families?
Yes, I do that. There are many families that the kids speak perfect English, but the parents don't.
Okay.
And then that's what I connect.
So you're able to help with families where English may not be the first language?
Yeah.
Okay.
And when we have a workshop or meetings that the parents come, the speaker is in English, I'll be there to help them
That's
with
wonderful.
the translation.
Do you have a personal story that you're comfortable sharing about your own experiences and how it brought you to this work?
I know Mindi.
Okay, we'll be talking to Mindi later.
Okay.
She's the founder.
Yeah. And when I met her and I learned that she had history or a story on her own, and I was like, oh, it's not only me that I was a survivor myself. And then that connected us, and for the first time in my life, I spoke freely about my own story.
Yes. And I know you have a long story with multiple incidents of sexual trauma. So it's wonderful that you were able to connect and find this resource in the community, and that's why we're talking about it tonight, so that we can let people know that there is help available and there are people who can help people to find that kind of resource that can help them have a new life and a different life. So I know you mentioned you were victimized by multiple people throughout your life?
Yes, as a child, I remember a family member, and then the doctor, the specialist that I was treating my asthma.
Yes.
He abused me, and I was just 9 years old.
Wow.
And
that's supposed to be a trusted person in the community, a medical professional.
He was a university professor,
Yes.
and a person that I well respect in the community, and nobody knew what he did.
Right.
After he closed the door.
Another reason why we're having this honest conversation is to let people know it's not right, it's not normal, and if you are experiencing something like that, you do want to come take advantage of these wonderful people who are here tonight to share this message. So what message would you like to share that there is no judgment and people should not be afraid to share this story?
One of the most important things, and we all experience, is that nobody's going to believe us. And that's what I wanted to tell people. Doesn't matter if you think you're not going to be believed, talk anyway, because somebody's going to believe you.
That is true.
In Inner Truth Project, we believe.
Yes. No
everybody.
judgment.
No judgment. Everybody, because you don't know where the predator is and what is his social
standing in the community.
And, could be anyone.
Yep, it's true. So this is Thanksgiving month, and I would love to hear what you're grateful for.
Grateful to be here tonight.
Okay.
I'm grateful to be part of the amazing Inner Truth Project.
Yes.
And I'm grateful that I'm still here, my age, and enjoying my kids and my grandkids.
Your mother, your grandmother.
Great grandkids.
And you have the privilege to support other survivors.
Yes.
Through your own lived experience.
Yes.
Okay. So do you have any concluding thoughts that you would like to share with our listeners tonight?
Probably I'm going to repeat it myself. Please do not hesitate to look for help, and there is hope.
Okay. Thank you for that. And thank you for joining us. And thank you for your honesty and telling your story. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me here.
My next guest is Jessica Bright. Jessica, you're the Community Outreach Coordinator at Inner Truth, and I know you're very effective in that role because I see you in the community often and you seem to know everyone when we meet. How do you perform outreach at the Inner Truth Project?
Hi, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the questions. Outreach could be day to day, just depending on the different events. We really try to put our feet in the ground and go to anywhere that will have us pretty much.
So community events, and then you do something with some after school programs as well?
We do any type of community event that's bringing education and awareness. We try to participate in that. Depending on different clubs and after school, groups and things like that, they will invite us to come and give workshops and presentations. We go to the college quite often.
Okay.
The list goes on and on, Eve.
All right. And I know you have a personal story that involves substance use disorder and mental health. Are you comfortable sharing your experiences and how it brought you to this work?
Yes, absolutely. Is this where I share my experience?
Yeah, this is it. You're on.
So I am in recovery from substance use disorder. I have just celebrated 5 years back
Congratulations.
Thank you. Back in August. There was a lot of years where I tried to stay clean and relapsed and struggled with anxiety and depression and different types of trauma in my life. This time has been different for me, and I'm a continued partner of the recovery community and an active member, and I'm super proud.
And I know you had kind of a wake-up call that brought you to finally making the permanent change this time.
Back in April of 2018, my mom, who was somebody that I trusted and that I loved and that I shared a lot of memories with, had passed away from a drug overdose. And unfortunately, when they had done the autopsy report, studies and everything showed that it indicated a fentanyl overdose.
So dangerous in our community, and we're constantly trying to educate the community. 2 grains can kill.
Yeah.
It's in so many things and so many substances that you wouldn't expect it to be in, and it is lethal. It's absolutely lethal. So thank you for bringing that up. Thank you. And I know you have a little girl that
I
also
do.
Really made a big change in your life.
Yeah. So when I had come to recovery, I also was pregnant. And so, there was all of these different things that I was facing with in the beginning that could, they were very challenging, being a new mom, losing my mom. But, every day I just, I do my best and, try to break the dysfunction, the cycle, like how I was raised and how she was raised and how her grandparents and her parents were raised and so on and so forth. So.
And now your lived experience is helping you to mentor and be a peer and support other people in the community. And that's why it's important for us to talk about it, to let people know that there is quality of life on the other side. And if you do the work, there's joy.
Yeah, so I am a certified peer recovery specialist, and it is such an honor to be able to work with individuals, not only at the Inner Truth Project who are survivors, but people who are also experience substance use disorders, or maybe, they are wrapped up in alcohol and they don't know where to go. But whenever I tell them I get it, and when I tell them I get it, it's because I really understand. I see like this relief or hear this sigh on the end of the line. It's like, okay, so there is hope for me. There is a chance.
Absolutely. Thank you for being that role model. I know you're a great advocate for the Inner Truth Project. Do you also refer to other community-based resources when appropriate? Like we're talking about people looking for treatment. I mean, I know the Inner Truth provides trauma work, but for substance use
Absolutely.
You would refer to community organization.
Yeah.
Right?
So I want to say working by ourselves would not be fair to the people that we're serving, and nor do we want to be the end all say all. We specialize in sexual trauma and work with survivors who've experienced any type of sexual abuse. So, we're consistently connecting with additional resources in the community. So if it's like they need help with going to treatment, or perhaps they are looking for an anonymous meeting, or even other like psychiatry or things like
mental
that.
Health,
mental health disorders that they maybe need to address. We will connect them to the appropriate person. So
thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you would like to share the message that there is no judgment and people should not be afraid to share their story. Can you talk about the supportive and non-judgmental atmosphere at the Inner Truth Project?
Yeah, so it's interesting when you see a lot of our guests walk in, they look around and they're like, wow, because it's such a inviting and relaxing atmosphere. And, we don't, like Hortensia said, you guys heard from her earlier, like we don't judge. Whatever your story is, bring it. We want to be able to help you start unpacking some of that stuff.
Okay. So what is your advice for someone to start the process of healing and recovery?
As much as the phone weighs, pick it up. And, reach out, be vulnerable. That's your, like one of your first challenging steps is allowing somebody to help you. I know even now at 5 years clean, at times, it's difficult for me to say, hey, I need help with something. But knowing your role and knowing that you don't have to do this alone is super important.
So learn about resources, find a peer, and you said the pain will end. Hang on.
Yes. So, and I was saying early on, I learned, have hope. And I had learned that there was this little acronym that stood for Hang On, Pain Ends. And I remember just running with that in early recovery. So maybe somebody else
That's your mantra.
can.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if someone is trying to reach the resources and the wonderful people who are speaking tonight, the phone number is 772-200-4599. That's 772-200-4599. 4599, or you have a Facebook page.
Yep,
they could find
us at the Inner Truth Project on Facebook, or also visit our webpage at innertruthproject.org.
And we always mention 211.org or dialing 211 on your telephone as well. 211 doesn't provide services, but they would connect you to available resources in the community. So if you can't remember anything else, remember 211. So what can someone expect if they participate in a group session?
I would like to say, oh, it's great, we love you, and, kumbaya. I would say the first thing that they could expect is to be nervous.
Okay, and that's
right?
normal.
And that's totally normal. We all start out new somewhere. And, you're coming into an invited setting where, we are here to celebrate you and to bring topics that are going to help you along with your healing journey. A lot of times this could be sad for people, but we're here to be able to empower you to move forward in life.
And I know you have some fun projects too and events that you do in the community.
Yes.
So you want to talk about some of them?
Yes. So I would like to let everybody know that we do have our Great Cupcake Escape coming up, which is February 5th. It will be at Heathcote Botanical Gardens. It's a fun family day where you can basically come and eat a bunch of cupcakes.
So what could be better than that?
Yeah. So keep posted on our social media for the different details. We also have some baker contests that positions available and things like that. We also have our other annual events in May. We will have our pop-up women's fashion boutique. That will be at IRSC College.
Okay.
And then we also have different workshops, like writing workshops, or equine therapy, or trauma-informed yoga that we do monthly at the Inner Truth Project. We do have a yoga studio on site, and we offer monthly yoga to the community.
Yoga's amazing practice, centering and stabilizing.
Yes, there's tons of health benefits.
Yeah. So as we discussed, this is Thanksgiving month, and I would love to hear what you are grateful for.
So I am grateful for a lot. I'm truly grateful for, I would like to say, the second chance at life, but I feel like I'm like a cat, like where I get 9 lives. And I really am grateful for the opportunity to, sculpt my life in a way that I never knew was possible. I'm grateful for, my friends and family, my daughter, my recovery, and the lovely people who I work around every day.
Thank you so much for that message. We're grateful that you joined us.
I'm grateful that you invited me.
So my next guest is Mindi Fetterman, the founder and visionary leader of the Inner Truth Project. Mindi, the mission of the Inner Truth Project is to offer therapeutic services to survivors of sexual trauma and educate the larger community on prevention strategies and trauma. Our previous speakers have done a terrific job of explaining your programs. Can you speak about why this work is so important?
I absolutely can, but honestly, I don't know if you need me to say anything because they were so fantastic.
They did do a great job.
I'm super fortunate to have the staff that we have at the Inner Truth Project. But the work that we do is incredibly important, because we're not duplicating services that exist anywhere in the community, and because we specifically work with survivors of sexual trauma. We're not working with people who are dealing with, we are working with people who are dealing with other traumas, but we're not talking about their other traumas specifically. We're using the word rape and incest and sexual abuse and sex trafficking. So the work is super important because we're using words that are typically shameful.
Yes.
And that when people go to other agencies or getting services elsewhere is maybe the last thing that they're addressing. So what we do is take the most shameful and the most hidden part of their story and bring it to light and make that the focus and the highlight, and try to figure out how can we take that hidden dark part of your story and make it the gem and take it and make it the power that fuels you forward.
Oh, that's beautiful. And it's all done in obviously a very safe environment.
Absolutely.
And a nurturing environment.
We try.
Yeah.
We try. Yeah. The safe aspect of the Inner Truth Project is not a safe house or residential or a hidden place, but it is sacred in that everybody who comes in understands that the place is for them and that it is not clinical, it is not sterile. It's really supposed to be inviting and warm and a place where people can feel like they are understood, because we are a survivor-led organization. So they can walk in, take a breath, and know that there's no judgment when they walk through our doors.
So it's emotional strength, hope, health, and well-being.
All of those and more.
Yeah. I know your personal story was the motivation to provide local resources when you discovered that few existed. Can you share how your dream became a reality?
I wish I could give it to you in a normal timeline, but it really came, in fits and starts. Is that the right saying?
I think you said it was organic.
It was organic. Well, that is absolutely true. I shared my story publicly. Gosh, it was over a decade now. And it felt really natural for me to be able to talk about it, and it felt healing for me. What was surprising is how many people came up to me afterwards and said, "You just shared my story."
Wow.
Or "You just told my daughter or my sister or my mother's story." And it was really a watershed moment for me because I realized so many people had experienced what I experienced. But in that same moment, I realized, okay, now what? We've all removed the Band-Aid. We're starting to talk. There's so many of us, but where do we go? And so I didn't really have a plan. It was just that the seed was sort of planted. And the more I talked about that we needed something, the more ideas started to come from other people. And like I said, it's a survivor-led organization because everything that was started came from ideas from survivors.
Right. So that led you to be able to fill a gap in the community, to break the ties of shame that exist in our society around sexual violence, rape, and incest. What are some of the programs offered through the Inner Truth Project?
Like I said, we're survivor-led, so I always say, sort of tongue-in-cheek, but I mean it, I'm pretty creative, but the ideas don't really come from me. So we have all sorts of programs and services, but they're not necessarily my ideas. They come from the survivor. So if somebody we're working with comes in and says, "I've heard about this type of yoga and I would really like to try it," then we will research it. We will see if there's a particular practitioner in the area that we can get that is certified in trauma, and then we will try to put that program in place. So everything that we do, that we try to bring into the Inner Truth Project, is specifically from the desire of a survivor. So we do workshops that are for the body. working on the trauma that we keep inside of our body. We do individual therapy, group support. We do writing workshops, art therapy, equine therapy. We work on how do we manage our diet and not eat from an emotional standpoint.
Right.
You name it, we're going to do it if it revolves around taking our lives to the next level so we can live as our best selves.
That sounds wonderful. So are there fees to access services?
We do have some fees, and that is so that we have revenue so that we can keep our doors open. And how it works is when we have a survivor that calls us for therapy or for our workshops, they become part of our family. They're part of our program. So there's an annual program fee of $50. It's a one-time fee. If they can't pay that, then of course we waive that fee because that's what our fundraising covers. And then for therapy, it's $20 a session. And again, if they are not able to financially afford that, we're going to work with them. We never turn anybody away.
You don't turn anyone
Absolutely.
away. And those fees are so minimal. It's almost a token, but it does help keep the doors open, as you said.
It does. It adds up at the end of the month for us, but we also know it can add up for somebody who can't afford it, so it's not something that we absolutely need to get.
I know everyone's experience is different. How would you describe trauma?
Trauma is really how you go throughout your day through the lens of what you've experienced. And so trauma is different for everybody. Some people just don't even like to use the word. So I always say, every single person has something. They just don't necessarily identify it as trauma. But we're all surviving every day through life, really. And it really is how you're coping, how you're managing, and how you're taking your life experiences and putting them into your everyday, your reactions. So we want to know what your experiences are, and are you reacting in a healthy way?
Well, I'm so grateful to know that, that these programs are out there. And as you say, everybody has had some type of trauma in their life. And the trauma that we're talking about is probably one of the most horrific things that somebody could experience. So thank you for the work that you do and for the services that you've created. What are some tools or practices that can help someone maintain a steady sense of peace during challenging times?
Well, I just want to back up. The thing that you just said about it being one of the most difficult things for people to experience, it's a lot of people who have experienced it. Statistically, it's 1 in 4 girls before the age of 18 who've experienced some type of sexual trauma. And this is all genders. So for men, it's 1 in 6. So sexual trauma doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter what color you are, what part of the community you live in. So we're talking about an open secret. This is all over our community. And so we have a lot of people who are walking around with anxiety and depression and different types of mental health issues related to their sexual trauma. So the first thing that we want to do to answer your question is help people get grounded and learn how to deal with their anxiety and their triggers, the things that are going to push them back into their trauma, which is often their post-traumatic stress disorder.
And I know you talked about doing some things around grounding and breathing techniques, and we talked about how important it is to not isolate.
Correct.
To encourage connecting with support people.
Well, one of the most difficult things I personally think about sexual abuse and rape, incest, is how isolating it is, because it's so lonely, because as Hortensia and Jessica had mentioned, it's really hard for people to share. They don't think they're going to be believed. So they don't share their stories. They don't talk about what happened to them. And then you start to carry all of this guilt and this shame and what's wrong with me, and it separates you from the rest of the world. So the isolation is very, very difficult. So we want to build a community so that you know that you don't have to suffer alone. Listen, the suffering isn't going to go away. It's just how do you manage it? The ups and downs of life. Correct. So it's the support, and it's that you don't have to be alone as you're healing.
Well, we live in a victim-blaming society, and so we do need to keep talking about sexual abuse and heal ourselves and find ways to heal ourselves.
100%. Yeah.
And that stigma, as we said, it doesn't discriminate. Age, race, ideology, ethnic identity, income level, it can hit us anywhere, right?
Absolutely. And I think the first time that you and I spoke, I used the word pandemic.
You did.
And I think that was surprising for you, as it is for most people. But if you think about how insidious it is and that you can't see it, you don't know it exists, and it's silent, it really has the markers of a pandemic, and it's so widespread, right? And we don't necessarily know how to stop it. So the best way that we can work around it is talk about it. The more that we're open, the more that we make it okay to talk about these things and let survivors have safe spaces to talk about their stories, the less places that the perpetrators have to hide.
I know. And when we talked about the incidents with male, I think it's important. You mentioned that sometimes they have an unfounded fear of becoming a victimizer themselves, and we know that's not true.
Right. Well, you mentioned earlier about a victim-blaming society, and there are a lot of myths that we have as the society, and society is us, right? We make up the society. So there's a lot of things that we internalize that we don't even realize that we have as a bias. And one of them is that if a man has been sexually abused as a child, that he will grow up and become a perpetrator. And it's not necessarily something that we even necessarily think about. It's just ingrained in our thought process, and it is absolutely false. Sexual crimes, rape, sexual abuse, they're crimes of opportunity, and they're crimes of control. It's not about sex. People who become perpetrators, who molest children, they're pedophiles, and that is a whole different level of a crime. So most of the boys who are molested as children do not grow up to become pedophiles. It's a myth, but that myth carries over in our society, and it keeps men silent, and it keeps them in shame.
And that's why I wanted to talk about it openly, so that we can let people know, please come forward.
Absolutely.
Yes. So as this is Thanksgiving month and gratitude plays an important role in recovery, what are you grateful for?
Well, when you asked the question to Jessica and she, listed so many things, I was nodding my head because I feel so grateful for so much. But I have to say, I'm mostly grateful for understanding gratitude. I didn't have gratitude in my life for so many years, and I felt so victimized, and I felt like everything was happening to me and I didn't deserve to be happy. So every morning I do wake up with gratitude. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to be clean and sober. I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for the people I work with, but I'm grateful that I recognize the gratitude.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right, absolutely. And that's why during November, I love to talk about gratitude, because I know how important it is in the whole process. And if we don't have gratitude for what we have. Somebody asked me the other day about the lottery. I guess it's some astronomical number right now.
Right.
And what would I do? And I said, I cannot think of anything right now that money could provide happiness for me. There's nothing I could purchase that would provide happiness for me.
I have a list.
Oh!
You want to know what the Inner Truth Project needs if you win the lottery?
Okay, well, we'll talk. But I'm just grateful,
right,
of what I have every day, and I don't need things.
Well, we take it for granted.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say, I'm just grateful that I don't take things for granted.
So do you have some closing thoughts or a call to action?
I absolutely do. I know that there is somebody listening right now who has been victimized in some way. If it's not sexually, there's domestic violence, or there's financial abuse or emotional abuse, something. Because we all have a story. And if you're listening and you're struggling, there is no shame in reaching out for help. If you want to reach out to us and we're not the appropriate provider, we will help you find the right place. But as Jessica mentioned, picking up the phone sometimes is like picking up an elephant. And there's this crazy saying that says, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right?
Yeah.
So if you're listening and this is hitting you in your gut and it's making you feel some kind of way, don't ignore that. Get yourself help, because you deserve to live the best life that you can. And that means not being alone and not carrying these secrets, because eventually they will catch up to you.
772-200-4599, or go to the Inner Truth Project on Facebook, or innertruthproject.org, or call 211. There is help available. Thank you so much to all of you. Employment provides important structure as well as meaningful purpose for all people. For people in recovery, whether from substance use disorder or victimization, employment supports long-term recovery associated with better quality of life, greater self-esteem, and happiness. CareerSource Research Coast offers valuable tools for both job seekers and employers. Employers are supported with hiring and training. Job seekers can explore in-demand career opportunities and receive support with job search, job readiness, and training. You can go to careersourcerc.com to access resources. And if someone is listening and would like to access help for yourself, a friend, coworker, or family member, as I mentioned, 211 is always available 24/7. I think that's important to say. If it's Saturday night and you're in crisis, or you decide this is the moment that you want to have some change in your life, please go to 211. They don't provide the direct services, but they will connect you to appropriate resources in the community. They also have a website. It's 211.org. And then I am always available for any resources in the community, whether it's around substance use disorder or connecting one to the wonderful resources at CareerSource or any of our other community resources. I'm so well connected in the community, and I'm grateful for that. So I can be reached at elyon@careersourcerc.com. That's ELYON@careersourcerc.com. And if there are any community supporters who are listening tonight and would like to connect with the wonderful people at the Inner Truth Project, whether it be to support the work that they're doing or to support any of their new projects that are coming up, please feel free to reach out to them or myself. A huge thank you to my guests, and thank you for listening. Please tune in next month at 7:30 on December 26th to learn about Suncoast mental health. And I'm pleased to say that I'm going to have somebody from 211 talk about the wonderful resources that are available through the 211 organization. Happy holidays.